Welcome to another AVID chat. David Harpool and Jack Arnold. Always good to see you, Jack.
Good to see you, Dave.
So the topic of today, which is going to be pretty broad, but there are some strong points that we do want to make in here, is the fear of commitment. If you just think back in your life, or you don't have to think back right now, if there's anything you've ever been fearful of committing to, I think we could all raise our hand and say, without question, there's been multiple things. But we've found over our professional career, and really as of late, I would say, in the last couple of years, now going through our True Wealth process, which really helps you sit down and think about and articulate what's your purpose, what are your values, what are you trying to get out of life, that it actually creates, I think, quite a bit of fear. And that fear could either help drive you to accomplishment or successes or to whatever you may be trying to do, but it also could give you some extra anxiety. And that's really, I think, the thing to talk about today is fear of commitment. What do we do with it? And really, maybe the first part to say is, just being aware of it, right?
Yeah, I think being aware of it is definitely a first step. I think there's, by far the hardest thing to do, and, obviously doing this with clients, but also doing this with ourselves. We want to talk about work and the business, what direction we want to head in. I do think by far one of the hardest things to do is articulate what your values are and what you're actually trying to accomplish and what's your purpose and where are you headed. Like, I think that's hard to do. One is it's like very personal thing to say. And it's almost sounds weird when you say it out loud, because sometimes it's, maybe it sounds like it's kind of ridiculous or too ambitious or, I'd love to do that, but never me kind of thing. Like, I would love to do X, Y, Z. This is what really would drive me. But somebody like me doesn't do that type of thing.
Right. Well, and I think too, we are normally, we obviously have intimate relationships with people. So this isn't the case all over, but normally when just in regular conversations, we're talking about bigger, more vague things that are applicable to just mankind. Interest rates, especially finance stuff, right? Interest rates are going up, stock market, the economy. What do you think about the new tax law? Which is fine because we live here in America, but it isn't what truly David Harpool or the Harpool family household is trying to get out of life. That's one, it's out of my control. So really, I shouldn't focus a whole lot of time on there and really get down to, all right, what are we trying to accomplish as a family? You mentioned AVID, as a business. What are we trying to do? Who are we trying to serve? And get it out there. And man, it can be scary. There's no doubt.
There's a couple things. One is, I think it's hard to even come up with it. I think once you come up with it, there's always a tendency to try something else. So I try to think of an example, but it would be like,
well, I have one because I think most people can resonate. This is maybe a bad example, but buying a home, right? You're somewhat raised, at least I and most people have been raised to buy a home. Renting is not good. Building equity, all of these things. We had a whole discussion on the finance of that, but just emotionally, you go through that. Then you get into the home, and I have maybe outside of like my parents and a few other people, don't know too many people that have only owned one home. Yet you sign up for a 30-year commitment because that's most affordable at the time normally. And then you get in there and life happens, right? You outgrow the space, you have kids, I want a yard, we need to be close to a better school system. So what do? Sell it, buy another one. And so that's a thing that's constantly changing, where if you really had the vision of what does it look like in my future, maybe your first home would be your last home or something along those lines. I don't know.
Well, I think it could be we talk so much about like having your, objectives kind of leading your actions. Like, let's figure out what you're trying to do first and then match your actions to whatever your objectives are. I think a lot of times because we don't take the time to be introspective and think about what we're trying to accomplish. And somewhat commit ourselves to whatever we think our purpose is and what we're trying to do. And we substitute that effort with just actions. Like we just think, well, if I lived in a place that had this and this and this, well, things would just be so much better. But the fact is, like, you still have, it's still you, you're just in a different place. Like, those things will give you maybe a short-term burst of feeling like you're doing something, or you're moving towards something, but it tends to wane, because I do think there's always going to be a part of you that says that I know there's something else that I should be doing. Something else is important to me. I'm yearning for something, I don't know, whatever it is. I can't necessarily articulate it, but that's what I'm after. And I don't quite know what to do about it. So
do you think the core of that is that our inability to, as you said earlier, articulate our purpose? So if we don't, in other words, if we don't take the time now to really give time to, all right, this is who I am at the core, this is really what I'm trying to accomplish, and now I'm going to set on a path to try to do that. If I don't do that, it's somewhat maybe in the back of my mind, but I'm just making decisions that are more scattered and reactionary. And
yes, I think it would be, I love sports analogies just because I think they're good, like microcosms of life type things. So
right.
if you were let's say you start a season, and doesn't matter the sport, but let's say it's football season and you're starting the football season. I think some of the best coaches in any sport do a good job of kind of bringing people and focusing the team on a goal of some sort, on a purpose, and to why they have that purpose. Because they don't say, it's not random actions. It's a broader purpose that informs kind of what your kind of intermediate goals are. And then that kind of informs what your kind of basic actions would be. So if a good coach inspires the people that play for him, they have a good culture, they work with one another, they're focused on the longer term goal. People always joke about Bill Belichick. They ask him all these questions in these press conferences, and he says, we're on to Cincinnati. Like, he's not focused on things that happened in the past. He has a singular goal, and he's going to keep pushing towards that goal. He knows that I'm going to put myself in the best position because I have this purpose, and that's what I'm after. And if that means I need to do this to achieve that, fine. But if I have to do this other thing to do that, then I'm fine too. Like, for example, they're not going to say, oh, I'm this type of offense. They'll say, I'm going to run whatever offense it takes to get me to my purpose, let's say. Right. They don't box themselves in and say, well, this is how I do things. I'm going to just, as hard as I possibly can, do these things and hope that I end up in a place that I like. They say, I want to end up in a certain place, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get to whatever that purpose is. Knowing that along the way, you're going to be pulled in different directions, because there's going to be some, we talk about investment stuff all the time, but, if you commit yourself to an investment program, you're way better off in committing yourself to some kind of program that you're willing to follow for a long time. Right. Most people get themselves into troubles because they'll start with something and then change to something else, and then change to something else, and change to something else. All of those things could be fine on their own. It's the jumping from thing to thing that makes you end up nowhere. You want to pick something and kind of, stick with your horse kind of thing, and just ride it out, knowing that it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah, but that's easier said than done, especially when it comes to investments. But in life, that's hard to do. Relationships, a house, a job. How many times have we talked to people? Myself, I've had multiple careers, if you will. It ultimately brought me back to finance almost 15 years ago, which is great. My true passion, really helping people accomplish things and get the most out of life. But, so many people do a job because it pays the bills, or it gives them the money, but their passion isn't in that. And it's like, well, such is life. If I had to change, man, just all the sacrifices I'd have to do. Well, yeah. It doesn't come easy.
So this guy, this is like a somewhat off topic, but do you know what these NFTs are? These non-fungible token things?
No.
All right. So non-fungible tokens are basically like digital goods that you can purchase using cryptocurrency, and it gives you ownership in it. it's basically a way to authenticate that you own a digital good. So there's like NBA Top Shot, which is like basically the NBA's package these highlights, and they say, we'll sell you this. It's almost like a digital trading card, I guess you would say, but you purchase it with cryptocurrency. It's called a non-fungible token. It doesn't really matter. That's just a little bit of background. This is like the hottest thing going right now. So there's this artist. This is a commitment thing. There's this artist. His name's Beeple, and he is a digital artist, and he's been creating a piece of artwork every day for the last 15 years. Every single day for the last 15 years.
Wait, it's not a new piece of artwork?
Yes.
Wow.
A new piece. Every single day for 15 years. Every day. Like no days off. Every single day for 15 years. I think. I'm pretty positive that's true. But every day for 15 years. He just sold it to a person that bought it using cryptocurrency. $69 million. He sold all of them like in one package. For $69 million. And I'm pretty sure he sold it through Christie's, the auction house. $69 million.
Wow.
Now, mind you, when this dude started doing this in 2006, right? He was just random dude. Like nobody, he wasn't like the guy that sold it for $69 million. He almost certainly was not doing it thinking, oh, 15 years from now, I will package these and sell them for $69 million. Like he just wasn't thinking that. He was doing it every day because some part of him said, my purpose is just I just love doing this. I'm just going to keep doing this. It's my purpose. Yeah, there's other things I could be doing, but I like doing this. It's fun. I'm just going to keep at it, and I'm going to grind and grind and grind. I'm sure there's been many, many days that he has said, I really don't feel like doing this today. But the longer that he did it, and the longer that he stuck with it, the more prolific he became. And he just built up this huge body of work. And now he sold it for all his money.
What kind of art? Do you know?
It's all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
You can look them up. I mean, it's not like they're gone now.
But I think what would be interesting too, and one, that's the epitome of a commitment. I can't even imagine like what else do I do besides like brush my teeth, and even then I forget a day probably over the last 15 years. But I bet you his passion was not, I'm going to have so much artwork that somebody's going to give me millions and millions of dollars.
Yes.
That wasn't the challenge. I would almost guarantee it. It was some other thing that probably was at the core of whether he's just an artist and he just wanted to do that, or challenging himself or something. And I think that would be an interesting thing to find out.
He had a purpose and he committed himself to it. And I'm sure there's days when it waned that he felt like I want to do something else or give up or quit. I mean, 4 years into it. I mean, it's like I'm just doing this all the time. But he just committed himself and kept doing it. Like,
so what do? You create a purpose, right? Maybe you're fortunate enough to get this out there, and I'll go back to our process again. Helps people really articulate that and even get it out of paper and share it with people, which is half of the battle. You know, this is successful plans are even more so successful if you write things down. 94% more successful written them down. So you do all that, and then you have these things at the end, and you have steps, and you're like, yeah, I don't know. I'm glad I said it, but I don't know if I can actually do it.
Well, I think it pops up, and you realize how much time and effort it's going to take. We've talked about this, like in the 6 stages of change thing, where
yes,
you almost have to know that if you start, like in an odd way, if you start pursuing something that is something, even if it's slightly outside of the ordinary, that you're going to have, even if it's not outright, you're going to perceive that people are going to be thinking that you're odd. Like this dude making all this art, like you make this every single day, these digital art things, and you put them out into the world, and like how much of a commitment, how hard that would be. I think another good example is all these, we have these cathedrals and all over the world. And some of these things took like hundreds of years to build. It takes them 300 years to build it. Like the person that's like, imagine being the first few workers in there thinking, all right, guys, let's hit it. Day one of the next 300 years. Like you can't possibly be doing that unless you feel like there's some other purpose to what you're doing than just, well, is this thing going to be done by the end of the year? Like, no, you'll be dead before it's done. Like you're just working on a different time frame and with more purpose other than just like a quick turnaround. I want some kind of result type thing.
So then it's safe to assume, I think, that you have to frequently revisit your purpose so
Yes.
that the fear of commitment doesn't overshadow what you're really trying to do. And whether it's sports, painting, working out, eating better, financial habits, they're more than likely going to be probably little tedious, mundane, boring stuff that at some point you're like, this is just, what am I doing? It'd be way easier to just do this, probably because everybody else is doing it this way anyway. So what the hell? I don't even know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Unless you say, no. Okay, this is this is why I'm doing this. And then hopefully what happens is 2 years goes by, 3 years goes by, 5 years go by, and it builds some sort of like internal habit that you're not, maybe you get over. Do you wonder if you get over the fear? Do you think you at some point, or is it always there and you need to revisit the purpose? I don't know, kind of rambling.
I think you have to revisit it. I think it might be easy. I think it's one of those things where when you're doing it for a while, I think you're going to do something for a while. You commit yourself to something. You're going to have like crises of faith, like where you're just like, I don't know if this is the right thing. I don't know if I should be doing this. I haven't gotten results in a while, or it's not going the way I necessarily thought it was going to go, or whatever. It doesn't really matter. I think those things are going to happen. I think the more that you practice again, this is the stages of change thing. I think the more that you make your way up the hill and then you fall back a little bit, but then you work your way back up the hill, I think the more frequently you go through that, of the 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but then 3 steps forward, and you make progress, I think you're more apt to say, been here, like I've done this. That doesn't make it any better in the moment. It sucks, but It's easy to say, it'll pass. I just need to keep doing what I'm doing and keep grinding and remember my purpose. What am I trying to do? What did I say I wanted to do, and what are my values? Am I still working towards those? And if those things are yes, I think it just gets easier over time.
Yeah. And I think it's also worth saying that it's okay if that purpose and passion changes. Right?
Well,
you can be going down this path and working towards things, and you say, you know what, this is not what I thought it was going to be like. It's actually, it's different. And that in itself, probably revisiting and having some open dialogue as to those things. Because I think even as we get older, our viewpoint on life changes. What is important to us changes. I know as a father now, it's a completely different, having 2 little people in my world. As much as I like it to just be selfish me and thinking about what I'm doing, I want to be mindful of, my impact to them, and hopefully raising good human beings on this planet.
Yeah.
So being open to yourself and honest with yourself to say, okay, is whatever I'm working towards, is it still meeting the main purpose that I'm trying to get out of it? And if not, be honest, because you're going to have some fear to say, well, I can't throw it in the bag. Then I've wasted the last 15 years, right? This could be a great business thing. I'm in a business, I've given it my whole heart and soul, and it's just not working out. But I can't get rid of it because then it's a loss, it's a failure. And that's not necessarily the case. But it's easier for me to say that, than actually go through it.
You kind of have to know when is the time to throw in the towel and when is the time to persist, or maybe change direction. Maybe you can always refine. You can say, well, here's the things that I'm trying to do, but it's kind of my thought for what I wanted to do met with the real world and realized, oh no, I don't really want to do that. I think we've even talked about this before. There's a lot of what you end up doing. It's just, it's refinement. It's elimination than it is addition. You're just taking things away. You try things and you say, no, I don't like that. You end up better off eliminating things you dislike and trying to add in a bunch of things that you like. Because I just think that's been my experience in ways. Is the older that I get, the more I realize things that I dislike and what I don't want to do. And it's just been a matter of elimination of things more than just addition of things. So a little bit rambling. Trying to make a coherent message out of some thoughts we were having just before we started talking. I think it's mostly just commit yourself to something, articulate your goals and your values, and realize it's just going to be a tough road no matter what you end up doing. But in the end, that's kind of it's worth it. That's if you're working hard and you're falling on your face sometimes and probably moving in the right direction. It's not going to be
Yep, no doubt about it. As always, if we can play a role, that's what we love to do. Think, plan, live. That's our motto. It comes with fear along the way, but hopefully we can help you get through it and help you accomplish things. So good topic, Jack. Good to see you as always.
All right, see ya.
Catch you next Tuesday.